Obviously, we're at FreedomFest, so a lot of the conversation is about freedom. It's our personal liberties, how we choose to live our lives. But I want to bring up a demographic of people that don't have the same level of rights, as all of us in this room. It's a demographic of people who are limited in their freedom of movement, and they're barely employable. They don't get to do the things that we are able to do unless they have permission to do it. And that demographic of people are children, our children. See, we're talking about what we can do as individuals, but we're saying it from the perspective of adults. But our children are dependent on our choices. They're dependent on our freedom and our choices to move about this world and make choices on behalf of them. I want to talk about my story as a child who was dependent on choices and had no control over it. I was born August 1st, 1984, in Detroit, Michigan. My father was 50 years old, my mother was 24. My father was always married, but he was never married to my mother. We were the other children. From the very beginning, myself, my sister, who is 4 years older than me, we were destined for single parenthood. My mother's single, struggling woman was put in positions to move about in this world, making her own choices to take care of us, absent of my father. My father, of course, paid child support, but that was about it. That's all he really gave me. Instead, my mother bounced around from family member to family member, trying to find shelter. At times, we ended up homeless twice when I was a kid. Before the age of 18, I lived in 4 states. And it wasn't because we were in the military or anything like that, people often ask. It was because my mother was trying to take care of us and trying to take advantage of every opportunity. But as a kid, I had no say in these choices. We just moved. We just went places. I had no say in the involvement of my own father. I remember as a very young child struggling. You know, we lived in upstate New York with one of my family members, and I remember the emotional abuse that was happening. And once my mother became fully aware of what was going on, we left. But we had no place to go. So we stayed in hotel rooms. Eventually, a stranger allowed us to stay in our trailer, all 3 of us in one bedroom in a trailer. So my mother got on her feet. But when she got on her feet economically, I was already suffering. One day at the age of 6, I told my mother that I wanted to die. And she didn't know what to do. So she went to a professional, and they gave her some advice. I still remember the car ride, not knowing where I was going, and entering the building, not knowing what the building was, and her handing me off to some people. It was a mental hospital. I was institutionalized, and I didn't fully understand why. See, I wasn't really suicidal. I just wanted my father. I just wanted some stability in my life. And the thing that people don't understand about being institutionalized in this manner is, if you commit a crime, you know you're going to get 5 years and you can count your time. But when you're put in a place like this, you have no idea when you're leaving. And as a 6-year-old, every time my mother came to visit me, I asked her, is this the time I get to go home? And of course she would tell me no. And I would later find out from my sister that she would cry every time on the car ride home, because she knew she couldn't take her son home. I was there for 3 months, 3 agonizing months, doing everything I was told to do, and I learned a lesson of, if you share your feelings, you can be institutionalized. And that's why I generally kept to myself, even into my adulthood, until I started expressing myself with my book and started Wrong Speak. I was fearful of expressing myself. But the choices that my parents made affected me my entire life. Why did my father decide to, go away from his responsibility as a man to take care of his kids? Why didn't he own up to cheating on his wife with another woman and stepping up to raise his offspring? Why didn't he do that? Well, my father has the right to do that. He has a choice. He is free to be a terrible father. As long as he pays his child support, that's all we require. Why did my mother get with a married man? I think that's a fair question. But that was my mom's choice, and I was born out of it. And I bring up my story as an example of how you decide to live your life as an adult, as a parent, affects your children. When you're unhappy in the moment and you think the children will be fine if we separate, you need to really think hard about that. You need to talk to people who were those children who grew up in that environment, where they felt responsible for their parents splitting up. You need to ask these questions next time you lay down with someone. It might be a good time, but it might be forever. And we don't think about that. We don't family plan. And I didn't family plan either, because I wasn't raised in that environment. But one thing I did do that was different than my father, I made the choice to be involved in my son's life. I made the choice to be the better person, to not have my son go through that, to be there anytime he wants. He can call me anytime. I'll come and get him anytime he wants. And I'll be there when he needs me. My son never had to struggle like I did. And that's how I decided to exercise my freedom. I decided to put my son first, myself second. My son is the inspiration for me to write my book. I dedicated that book to him, and he was able to read it, and he was proud of his father because of it. So I leave with this. As you make choices, as you talk about freedom, most of you are probably parents, your choices matter. And your choices impact your children far beyond you think. Thank you.